Managing your D&D game can be a bit overwhelming, am I right? After running 7 games a week for the last couple of years, I have found a number of great online tools that help to reduce the exhaustion a little bit. Curious? Let's dig in. First up, we have a website that I stumbled upon while looking for an easy table for monster loot, and it's called the Thieves Guild. Thievesguild.cc has tons of actionable tables, random generators, and useful stuff, but I personally use it for the harvest and loot categories from various monsters. This provides simple DCs for interesting loot that you can take off of the bodies of your defeated foes, no matter what they may have been, and gives you kind of a feel for what you might pull off of a creature in order to get some mental juices flowing and essentially help make loot an interesting experience. Another great resource is Reddit. In particular, I like the D100 that gives you loads of options in smaller categories that you can save out the ones that catch your interest in order to be able to provide something at the table that maybe you mightn't have as easy a time creating in the spur of the moment. 3 pages that I have saved are D100 weapons that don't give a plus bonus, D100 swords that don't give a plus bonus, and my personal favorite, a D100 rare or uncommon non-magical items that I like to sprinkle into shops to world build a little bit and provide something interesting when people are looking for a shopping trip. Next up, we have the very originally named FantasyNameGenerators.com. Given that they have a Dungeons & Dragons subpage that allows you to pick from pretty much any race or creature type that you can imagine, you have loads of fantasy options to quickly come up with a name on the fly, just in case you aren't able to create those things with absolute ease. I've talked before about utilizing the M.S.R.P, Merchant Sorceries Rarities Price List, in order to figure out a more manageable cost for magic items in your world, whether you're crafting them from scratch or selling them in some kind of trade or shop. This particular resource to me just feels a lot more thought out than the same magic items price list that a lot of people use, and has a lot of nuances there. And if you happen to like sane magic items or the other options that are out there, a number of them are listed in columns down the side that you can dig into so that you can come up with the perfect price for the perfect item at your table. This one might seem like a no-brainer for a lot of people in the D&D space, but it is a big one that I had never used in decades of play, D&D Beyond. Since I've become a professional dungeon master, I use D&D Beyond for almost everything when it comes to reference material. Even though I own every single book physically, I also own them all digitally on D&D Beyond, and it means that in the heart of battle and in the thick of things, in 30 seconds flat, I can bring any rule to my fingertips in order to be able to run a game that's as close to rules as written as possible, and to adjudicate things in favor of my players anytime that I can't find it fast enough. Of particular value to me on there are the character creation tools that my players use to create all of their characters in our shared games, and the encounter building tool that I don't actually use to build encounters, but rather use after the fact in order to determine how many experience points my player characters should receive. For me, D&D Beyond is just a must-have, especially because of the next item on the list. Foundry Virtual Tabletop is my tabletop of choice for running games both in person and all around the world. Starting from a tiny little backyard project, Foundry Virtual Tabletop allows open source additions of all sorts of different modules to make it a vastly superior system to any that I have seen out there so far. With all the clunkiness of old code that Roll20 is bogged down under, Foundry is by comparison a lean machine. That isn't to say that it isn't without its quirks and without the difficulties that come with that, but for instance, being able to pick up a module that integrates with D&D Beyond so that I can import characters directly from there into my game world without having to do any work at all is absolutely a game changer when it comes to time saved for for me, and of course, when it comes to making everything available at my players' fingertips. Nowadays, you can practically pull entire adventures into there, and with a number of different Patreons out there that provide amazing graphical resources that are just out of this world, you really can't go wrong with Foundry Virtual Tabletop. In fact, they're even pushing into the 3D space, though personally I prefer a more two-dimensional approach. When it comes to a list of online tools that are of value, we would be doing a real disservice if we didn't mention DM's Guild. With all of the varied products that have been created over there by fans over the years that it's been in service, it is an absolute treasure trove of wonderful stuff. Personally, for me, I use a fairly small collection of DM's Guild items, but they are ones that have a big impact on my games. Paired with the thievesguild.cc that I mentioned earlier, I really like Anne Gregerson's Monster Loot series. Also the Monster Weaknesses series led by Daniel Kahn, the Home Field Advantage book by Valentin Prevost, and of course the Monster Talents series by Dragonix. Those handful of resources are enough for me personally to add a lot of flavor and a lot of surprises at my table that my players might not necessarily be expecting. I stumbled upon this particular map while I was looking at a map of Waterdeep. There was a short drop-down menu that showed a number of different options, and amongst them was a thoroughly detailed map of the Sword Coast, including a tool that allowed me to measure and work out distances following whatever path my players were likely to have to take across the land. This has been a huge tool that I found incredibly valuable in order to plan routes, work out random encounter possibilities, and of course to track my party's progress and where exactly in the world they are, even if none of them are Carmen Sandiego. Speaking of working out where in the world my players are, having access to the Forgotten Realms Wiki has been a lifesaver countless times, as the devoted fans over there have poured their hearts and souls into delivering the Forgotten Realms in all its glory with every appropriate reference into a functional wiki, allowing you to pull up obscure details that you just don't know and instead making you look like the complete Forgotten Realms expert. If you're running in the Forgotten Realms, this resource is invaluable, and that way you can answer questions like what is a fog giant or who on earth is Grand Peak Smasher. Finally, a tool that I have been stumbling my way towards for almost 20 years. Campaign Logger, put out by John Four over at Wizards of Adventure, is not only an amazing tool that allows you to integrate your notes, tie them all together, and be able to search for specific information out of your DM's binder in a flash instead of a mass of flying paperwork or searching by keyword through dozens of pages of the text files that I was using previously. It's also got a number of different randomization tables built into it and is now adding AI into the mix as well. For $5 a month, it's a great resource that would be a real shame not to mention. With tools like these available to us all, it is important to remember that every table is different and every table is going to need different tools. But if you've come across amazing tools that you think the world needs to know about, please leave a comment, and if you're looking for even more tools, then scan the comments. Regardless, thanks for watching today, and as always, happy adventuring.